All right, guys, welcome back to the Skull Buff Sports podcast. SportsCast, still not used to that. That's my bad, Harrison. How are you otherwise? You guys just got back from an exciting weekend of basketball, and it thankfully was exciting. We weren't so sure. So I'm here with Harrison. I'm here with Leo for the first time on the pod. How are you guys after that exciting weekend?
Doing great. I yeah, we both went to Kansas City. Leo still is in Kansas City. He's tuning in from the day of the championship game for Big 12. And we have plenty of stories to tell from those. I'm doing pretty solid and um happy to be back on the pod as I said last time, but happy that we got something going and happy to discuss.
Oh yeah, I'm very excited myself. Excited to be on here. Thank you all for having me. But yeah, as Harrison said, it's been a very eventful week. Still in Kansas City, enjoying my time, enjoying the last day of the Big 12 championship, and had a great crew out here, with me that's been doing a lot of great work I feel like. So it's been a very fun and great experience to learn a lot from.
Awesome, Leo. We want to start with you because the men's team made a splash this weekend that I don't think anyone was expecting. What were your expectations going into the weekend, and how did the vibes change as Colorado made their way through the Big 12 tournament? Because on our last podcast, we talked about it. We had close to no expectations. I don't know what you guys were thinking as you went there, hoping that they could do something like this, but this is what March Madness is all about. We go in there, we win a
Yes.
couple of games, we even give Houston a run. What were your thoughts just going through each game as we kept kind of pulling some games out?
Yeah, I think the storyline for this one really starts last Saturday back at the CU events, and they're getting that TCU team there that you blew out by 20 was the real stepping stone rolling into this conference tournament. Because not only do you blow out TCU by 20 at home, you get them in the first round. And I think just as a team, as a confidence builder, going against someone you're familiar with, someone you just played a couple days ago, it's refreshing. It's a confidence builder, and that's what the Buffs looked like. They came in confident, even when they started very sluggish offensively in that first half. Once they got their rhythm down in the center at T-Mobile Center and started finding their shots, I think they looked as a better, much more complete team. And not only that, you had a lot of seniors step up. I think that's where a lot of the credit goes in this run. Is you got to credit the leadership, you got to credit the guys who stuck through it, who had the confidence, who kept fighting even though things got grim. So I think it says a lot about the character of this team and just the passion that they have and the love of the game to come in and get two victories after only having three conference wins the entire season. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah,
Uh,
just to add my 2 cents to
yeah,
that.
go for it.
Yeah, I mean, it shows the power of just ending this regular season strong and not just mailing it in at the end of the year because they
Yeah.
could have easily known, okay, the season's over. We're not really going anywhere unless um, the team makes a massive run and beats teams that they definitely shouldn't. But they plugged along. I mean, they went into senior day with a refreshed mentality. I mean, you saw that with Julian Hammond and Trevor Baskin playing well in those last games, and then in that last game against TCU, and then they just went in, knowing that there's nothing to lose, there's nothing to be ashamed of at this point. You just go out, try to beat the team in front of you, and they did that 2 times in a row, and they played Houston for the second time this season. Pretty
Yeah.
hard. So this is a team that didn't waver to any competition, no matter how intimidating and no matter how poorly their season has gone.
Or I think you
So
say, Houston's number two team in the country, like you said, Harrison, just for them to be able to, keep it under double digits and keep fighting. They never gave up. They kept clawing. And honestly, they were just a couple of runs, a couple of short bounces from being right there in that game at the very end. So credit to them because Houston's probably going to be one of these, top four teams left possibly in the NCAA tournament here in a couple weeks.
Leo, I want to know what actually changed throughout the season that made them play so well at the end there, because obviously this was a team that was struggling throughout most of the regular season. We were, I believe, the lowest ranked team in the Big 12 conference, were we not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happens for us to be like basically the bottom of the barrel in the conference, and then all of a sudden we're having games, we're winning two games on the road in the tournament, and then we're playing Houston pretty well? What on the court physically happened to make us produce better?
I think it was kind of a little bit of strategy, if I'm being honest. I think Tad Boyle did a good job of trying to find out and find the hot hand. He spoke on that this is a team that sometimes you don't really know who's going to come out and have the big night. So it's finding the rotation, finding the lineup, whether that be something you see in scouting or something you saw in practice that week, or think you're going to get a favorable matchup going into a game, putting the guys in the right positions to succeed. And seniors, like I said, like Alexander, like Andre Yakumovsky came in. He had probably the best tournament of any Buffalo, and he started peaking right at the right time. During January, Coach Chad also said that this team didn't do a lot of learning. They were losing games, but they weren't able to get better from them. You look at the month of February, they were actually getting better off of their losses. They were making the correct adjustments, and they still had the passion. I think in this sport, first things first, you have to have the effort in basketball. It becomes so easy not to want to go up for rebounds, not to want to fight and full court press for all these games, knowing your season's been as grim as it has, but just the fight, the effort, be able to keep applying pressure and representing Colorado Buffaloes. I think this was a great tournament to just show the pride and tradition of what this basketball program has meant to not only the city of Boulder, but to those players in that locker room. It's a very prideful school. Colorado's one of the top premier schools in this country. So I think that pride really just showed throughout this team, and they represented the school well.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think this is a team that cares. I mean, even though they've struggled, you haven't seen a lack of. Well, my camera turned off, not that that matters, but um, this hasn't been a team that has mailed it in. Like I said, a second ago, this has been a team that you saw Trevor Baskin, when they were going down against Houston, you saw a video, him, crying. Like he's on the verge of tears. He's only been with the team for a year. And that's a guy that, while he's graduating, that's the type of player that you have to bring in, a type of player that will lay it all out on the line, no matter how outmatched physically or talent-wise you are. And, I think it was, in terms of the games they won, it was against teams they could beat because they were playing hard no matter what. But I think going forward, there just has to be a talent level that matches the desire and the effort because it's there. It's there. You
Yes.
see how Tad Boyle instills it every day. And so I guess if we'll get into the more of some of the future of the men's basketball program, that's what you'll get into. But I think what you have already is a team that cares, that plays, you know, out of their out of their element, up to their competition, and that has a lot of I guess philosophical things that they have right.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Tad Boyle because I think this season did a lot for him because we knew this was supposed to be a reset. We knew it might be a bit of a down year, and for the most part it was. But for them to come out swinging so hard in the tournament was extremely promising. And I noticed that Colorado men's basketball was getting a little bit of love nationally. Is getting to that point where everyone's like, it's March Madness. We got our first team that was not good all year suddenly making a run here. What's going to happen? And considering how well they played Houston, if you get a few good bounces, I know they weren't like that close to like do one shot, but if you get a few bounces at the end there and you take Houston to at least overtime or you somehow beat them, Colorado is all of a sudden like a big deal nationally. Everyone's going to be talking about how Houston is taken down in the tournament, how Colorado came out of nowhere. Credit to Houston, they took care of business like a top contender should, but Colorado was in there right there with them, and that was really exciting just to see how that season, how they at least went out. And I think that a lot of that has to do with Tad Boyle, especially as you said, Leo. This team really kind of cared, and the strategic adjustments were made, and they were competitive. And honestly, that's about as good as it could have gotten for this season. So at least they could end. I want to go to the women's side real quick. We'll get back to the men's, but Harrison, you also covered the women's tournament. We got similar results. You made it into a Haley Van Lith Instagram photo, which was incredible. If you guys want to go scroll that, you can just see her. It looks like you did that on purpose. It looks like you're smiling at the camera.
It does. I could not tell you that I was, that was on purpose, but it looks like it was. Like I'm posted up. I'm ready for the flick. Like
you were so ready. It looks like you tried to get in on it, and if you did,
Yeah.
you got it. Like that should be your claim to fame right there to start because that's all. That was so funny when that got posted in the group chat.
Yeah.
So everyone go see Harrison on Haley Van Lith's Instagram. You gotta like repost that everywhere, and
That's
she gets
that's
drafted.
1.2 million followers,
That's
dude.
1.2 million. That's huge for us. That's huge for you. That was awesome. But aside from that, the women's team had different expectations. Oddly enough, similar results. We didn't really know how far they would make it into the tournament. They kind of opposite of the men started to fade off as injuries started to take over, but they still made a little bit of a run their own. So take me through their tournament journey, Harrison.
Well, it started very rough because they kind of went in on a low note. They lost to Texas Tech in the season finale, and they had, what seemingly would be a tune-up game against Houston, the last seed in the tournament, had won one conference game all season, and they won. That's about all the positive I can take away from it, though, as there were 33 turnovers that let that game get pretty close late. I think there were maybe something like 14 in the fourth quarter alone, something insane like that. So, um, definitely a lot from that game that discouraged us as we had our flight canceled and couldn't make it to that game going into round two against Arizona. And I even wrote like a kind of a bristly column about like, oh, we need to look in the team needs to look in the mirror headed round two. And they did. They looked in the mirror and they fixed a lot of what they got wrong. And they had to play an Arizona team that plays really tough. The first time they played in the regular season, it was full court press the entire game, and they could barely deal with it. And this time they still went with the full court press, Arizona, rightfully so, but Colorado dealt with it a lot better, and they got some great production from their future. And we talked about what the future of the team looks like, with 6 players on the way out, including Frida Foreman, who didn't even play in this tournament, including Naimur Du, a really nice role player who adds a ton of length and defensive activity, who didn't play as well, had a concussion. And without those guys, you needed some of the future to step up, and you saw that in Kennedy Sanders and Tabitha Betson. Grace Oliver played some solid minutes as well, and even a player like Aaron Powell, freshman that hadn't really seen the floor much of all season, much all season. And she even came in, played some hustle minutes, made some hustle plays, got some tough rebounds, fought for some held balls, and you saw that game turn into what Colorado, what their wheelhouse is. They just kind of outlasted, grinded a team down, and had a solid win. And then against TCU the next day, it was more of the same. They ground them down, got off to a really hot offensive start, led by Jade Masagayo, who has one more year of eligibility, and we'll see if she comes back. I mean, we'll I guess in the day and age of the transfer portal, it's not a given nowadays, but um, she had 22 points. She made her first 7 shots, and that really pushed number 1 seed TCU, number 8 in the country, um, to the brink almost. And they had a chance still with a couple minutes left. It was only, a 3-point game, or it would have been a 3-point game if Masakawa had made a couple free throws, but free throws ended up kind of killing that game. They missed 8, lost by 7. It ended up being kind of a game they, in hindsight, could have won. And that puts them in an interesting scenario entering March Madness. Selection Sunday is tomorrow at the time of this recording. But, they proved a lot this tournament. They proved they can still fight, even though they struggled away from Boulder all season. Only had one conference win during the regular season on the road. But they won 2 in Kansas City, and they had a solid showing, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think you got to give credit to them, Harrison, because it's very hard when you limp into a season as a team. You're really gonna limp out, and that's kind of goes for most sports, especially at this level, at the high levels. With the way these athletes have to function, the running, the jumping, the up and down on the court, the practice regimen, everything that goes into being an athlete, it's very hard if you're not 100% at the start of the season to be able to go through as far long as they did, and the depth that showed up and the willingness to compete and scratch and claw was really admirable from that women's team.
It's kind of a story of expectations because as the season went on, the women's team was definitely just the better team of the two. And as the season just kind of kept going, things just kind of kept falling apart for them. They still get 2 wins in the playoff tournament. We're talking about the men's team, as I can't believe they managed to get 2 wins in the playoff tournament, and they end up kind of in the same place. But I want to hear about the actual experience. Harrison, you photobombed Haley Van Lith. You missed a flight. Leo, you're still boots on the ground. How has the tournament treated you guys? Has anything fun happened? Have you been talking to players? Have you been meeting other people? Have you been watching the other games? How's it been? Has anything fun happened?
Yeah,
Leo, let's
no,
start with you.
I think we're at something like over 30 hours of total basketball time watched this week, if we're counting strictly games. We've stayed at every single one of these games, even through the late showing and early mornings, but it's been a fantastic time. And I think the number one thing that sticks out to me is just the hospitality, the kindness, and just the people at the T-Mobile Center. Everyone at the Big 12 has been so respectful, so kind. Whether it's statisticians bringing you sheets, handing you microphones at press conference, serving you food, holding doors for elevators, it's just made you feel really welcome. And I think that's just shows the environment and the people in Kansas City. And, credit to the Big 12 for what they've been doing. And not only that, it's just exciting to see, Colorado as their first time in the Big 12 in over a decade, getting back into the conference where they belong, I feel like, and getting to see them against some of these other top teams and top players. And of course, there are so many fantastic athletes, so many different unique coaches and storylines, perspectives, fans that are all throughout the city, and just seeing the love of the game, really, because they're like Kansas and Kansas State fans pack the arena, Iowa State fans showing up, BYU, of course, all these fan bases in the Big 12 are just so impactful, so supportive of their teams, and it's really made for a fun time. And I think also you got to talk about the people. I'll shout out the crew a little bit. We got Zach, Liam, and Oliver and Remy here with me as well, and they've been just a blast. A lot of great men, great stories, and I think they have really made this experience as fun as it's been up to this point. And with still, a lot of hours, a whole 24 hours left in this trip, I'm excited for what's remaining.
Yeah, more of the same of that. I don't have a ton to add. I mean, obviously, I have my own people came along with me. Xavier, Ryan, and Kogan did an amazing job, and I think for us, it's a little different of a story because we kind of fought through some adversity that first day. Walked into the airport, keeping track of the flight, no worries, no delays, no nothing, and then all of a sudden it gets canceled, and we're like, whoa, what are we gonna do? We drove back to Boulder, went to Doug's Diner on 28th or not 28th, but
Baseline.
baseline, right. Doug's Diner for some lunch, and then um went back to the airport. We're thinking, we had to cover that game, we're watching it as we're going through security, um and having to write that recap as we're waiting by the gate. Um and that was a rocky start, and to say the least. I mean, especially when we're thinking, okay, we're going to be there for one game. We don't know if they're going to win or not, or make it past. So we may be watching the team we cover for one day, and then they pull off the win. And right after that win, Coach J.R. Payne walks into the presser, starts her opening statement, and then sees us next to Brian Howell as the only reporters there, and it's like, "Oh, you guys made it, awesome!" And that just made me feel really seen, like really like appreciated, and made that trip worth it, even if regardless of what happened after that point, because just the recognition of the coach, and seeing how we've been able to cover the team throughout the season. And then, more of what you said, like the hospitality was great. The basketball quality of basketball was great. I did some, mock commentary on my voice memos on my phone. And then,
Same.
for the championship game for the semis, that was a lot of fun. Some high level basketball. Like you mentioned, Haley Van Lith, MVP of the tournament. Really fun player to watch. A former Buffalo, Aaron Vonleh, dropped 37 in the semifinals. Um, and yeah, overall, really fun time in Kansas City. Media food, elite. I thought compared to Las Vegas, at least for the Pac-12 tournament last year, I thought the media food was pretty damn good, especially the championship game with the barbecue. You'll get that today.
I was going to
Y'all,
ask
y'all
very
should probably go
selfishly
there
if
kind
you
of
guys
soon.
got
Not
any
gonna
good
lie.
barbecue because that's what Kansas City's there for, right?
Yeah, Leo, y'all got to get ready soon. I mean, you'll probably have the barbecue again.
I really do hope so because Harrison, you and Xavier have both talked about this food, and we just haven't been seeing the same food at this tournament. I guess we
There
have
were some rough meals, I will say.
it's been a little packed. I will say last night they had like some chicken pasta stuff. We personally didn't get anything because the only time we actually ate before we went into the arena was the one day they had the best quality selection of food because that's just how these kind of things work. You learn in journalism, everything you plan for doesn't really happen and everything never goes the way you want it to. So it's kind of just learning to adapt and go with the flow. I mean, there's been a couple night where it's been like 2, 3 a.m. and we're at a burger spot because it's the only place in all of Kansas City that's open. So just interacting with the late night Kansas City crowd has been fun, I'd say.
I'm glad you guys have good things to say about Kansas City because I'm typically never going to if I have a choice. But I'm glad they're true.
I went to Kansas City with no expectations. I didn't know what to expect. The only time I'd ever been to there was for going to the airport for a layover, and I'm like, oh, this is Kansas City. I don't know, but it ended up being kind of fun. We didn't go too far from like the area with the hotel and the arena, but we got some barbecue of our own at a different restaurant. And that honestly, Leo, I'm gonna say this: the media barbecue was better.
Wow.
So
That's not good.
You better.
Where did y'all go eat? Where did y'all go eat? We got
Well,
the name drop.
Call them out.
but it wasn't even like the place we went to was bad. The place we went to wasn't bad. It was, it was fine. It looked kind of like a, more, not we probably should have gone to like some hole in the wall kind of barbecue place.
Yeah, those are
all
it.
messed up. I will say though, we got to go into the locker room post game and stuff. And the barbecue the players were messing up looked mighty delicious, and that aroma coming from those locker rooms, it was good. So we're gonna have to figure out where they went and maybe hit a fast spot.
Yeah.
I did spend a week at the Ozarks, so I do have good memories of Kansas City. So I can't. It's my hatred is purely sports bias, but I will still not say good things about them given the choice. Okay, so let's move on real quick and let's hit both of you guys before we do some superlatives here. But let's just talk about the future of each team real quick. Leo, let's start with you. Of the guys returning, just with the team's overall performance, how is next year looking? Just right off the docket, assuming that they don't make March Madness, which I think is near impossible. Just what's the future outlook after this Big 12 performance?
Well, hey, I think if you're a Colorado Buffalo fan, there is lots to be optimistic about this squad. Not only do you have 5 incoming freshmen that should make up a pretty impactful class, you still have, impactful players like Bangot Dak, that are coming back. You have RJ Smith, who's going to be able to eligible and returning. Obviously, these players haven't been confirmed returning yet, as there's still a month to decide. But from our conversations and everything we've had, it seems like this group's ready to run it back. They love each other. They love playing for Coach Tad, and they're ready to get going and grow into who they're going to become as players. Obviously, freshmen like Felix Caceres, and you have Andrew Crawford, who was a player of the year in Colorado, didn't even suit up a lot this season. So there is potential, there is depth, there are people waiting in the wings for their opportunity, for that chance to get out and play Colorado Buffaloes basketball. And I think it's just very exciting. It's going to be interesting to see, if they do bring in any other pieces in the transfer portal. I wouldn't be surprised if you see maybe 1 or 2 guys come in, depending on who leaves. But looking towards the bigs, I think the center and forward group is going to be very strong and a very focal point of this team next year. And that's going to be exciting to see where it blossoms into. But I think the Buffaloes have a lot of optimism.
It was a great experience for them, too. Harrison, same situation. You said, we have 6 people on the women's team leaving or exiting. What's the outlook there?
And it could be more. Like I said, Jade Masakayo, she, had a really, really good season and may see the grass greener on another side. But I think for the future, you saw each freshman this season, maybe besides Lova Lagerlit, who didn't play at all besides in an exhibition. You saw all of them have their moments. Tabitha Betson, she came in, didn't quite meet the lofty expectations that she had as a Big 12 preseason freshman of the year. Didn't make any all-freshman team, but you saw her have spurts. You saw her just in this Big 12 tournament. She's ended the season very strong. She had, I believe it was 16 points against Arizona, and she played some very solid defense against TCU. So you saw the tools. You saw that she's kind of a player that's good at everything, but not great at any one thing. So you hope that she can maybe find that special in her game going into next season. A player like um, Grace Oliver had a ton of great moments, with rebounding and shooting, and you see some of the people coming in for next year. Logan Greer is an absolute stud that you can just essentially plug right into the wing, where a lot of players from Colorado are going to be, departing from, like Lior Garzin, Neimer Du, Frida Foreman. You can plug a player like that right into, the wing spot. She almost reminded me a little when I watched her high school mixtape of like a Cody Williams, and just her length and athleticism, her ability to kind of, just drive and create her own shot. Um, and that's what the team desperately needs for next year. It's a shot creator. And then also at guard, you're going to see Kendall Wetta depart. And is that going to be Kennedy Sanders' spot? Not sure. She definitely had her struggles. She had, I think, 6 turnovers it may have been more than 6 actually, against Houston in that 33 turnover game. You saw her, not really carve out a secure spot in the rotation unless there were injuries. But going forward, you'll have to imagine they pursue a guard in the portal. They stick with a lot of their freshmen that made fun impacts this season, and we kind of go through the cycle again. You hope to develop the players you have, and go after what you need. So, I think the future is not sure, because there's a lot of change that could still happen between now and the end of the off season. But I think it still has a lot of positives.
All right. I'm going to put you guys on the spot here. I'm excited for this. Let's do some superlatives from the season or the tournament, however you guys want to dice this up. A player, a moment, a coach, a group, however you feel. And let's just take turns alternating with you guys, starting with Leo. So we're just going to start, obviously, with the MVP. Who was the true MVP of the men's season?
Oh, the entire men's season is kind of hard to say, but I think you just got to look at someone like a Julian Hammond, who kind of was the forefront of the team, who was carrying the ball up the court and kind of had to guide. Towards the end there, he kind of was a little bit, inconsistent, especially within this Big 12 tournament. But I think if you're looking at this season as an entire whole, as an entire stretch, you got to look at him as the leader, as the senior, as the guy who's been around, as the team MVP. And not only that, very impressive from the free throw line, might I add, over 90% from the stripe this season, led all of the players in the Big 12 and was top 10 in the nation, which is pretty impressive for him. So I think he's got to acknowledge that. But, maybe some honorable mentions, or I would think maybe the MVP for the Big 12 tournament specifically, you got to go Andre Yakumovsky, just the way he plays defense, his presence there. And then it translated over. He wasn't afraid to shoot threes at all during this tournament. And he was the energy. He was the leader. He did not want to lose. And I think that was really felt from a watching perspective.
Harrison?
Yeah, in terms of MVP for the season, Jaden Masagayo, and I think for the tournament, it's hard to say. It might honestly be Kennedy Sanders, just with how great she played in those last couple of games. Made it close against TCU. She had a bunch of points in the fourth quarter. Jaden Masagayo obviously balled out against TCU, but had some off games against, especially Arizona. Less so Houston, but overall for the season, it's definitely Jade. She absolutely came into her own, had to deal with essentially no formidable depth behind her at center. So she had to play a lot, but she stayed relatively healthy for the season and overcame some foul trouble issues and some non-conference play struggles to have, an all Big 12 honorable mention worthy season. So yeah, definitely MVP of the year for Jade.
All right. What about the unsung hero of the team? I'm talking the offensive linemen, the guys that do all the dirty work, the guys that don't show up on the stat sheet but have the value there. They're getting the boards, they may be getting the screens, they're playing hard defense. The guys that are going to be really appreciated in the locker room, but maybe to those watching from the outside didn't quite see their contributions. Leo, again with you.
I think just from hearing from senior day, I think you got to give the unsung hero to the scouting team and, the practice participants for Colorado and these young guys who are coming up. because a lot of the time, their names aren't called. They're not suiting up in the game ever. People are really not seeing them unless you're kind of within the niche of the team or hear about it. But these are the players who are going to make our team better, who are giving them the better looks, who are really pushing them. We kind of talked about a lot of the different freshman guys. Someone like a Felix Casares, actually, I guess you could say, is someone who's been super underrated, who's been getting more minutes, and he's been getting a lot better on the defensive end with his effort and his attack. He goes up, he finds a way to rebound. He's a very interesting, sneaky rebounder because he uses his position and his basketball IQ to get him in these positions to get boards. But I think he's going to be one of these players that's sneaky and can fly under the radar until next season. And I expect him to be one of the breakouts of next year's team potentially.
Yeah, I think individually for me, I would have to go with Naimer Du, but I will give a major shout out to Johanna Tadare. She, doesn't, score a ton. She doesn't rebound or assist a ton. I mean, but when she came in for Colorado, she conducted that offense. When she needed to play defense, she played solid defense, and she was the only player in the team that played in every game. With all the injuries, with all the concerns with depth, Tadare was always there. But I will also mention Naimer Du because of her length, her defensive activity. She also became a spark plug in games where the offense got off to rocky starts. She would just come in, hit a three or two, and that would kind of get the Buffs rolling. So I'll mention, in terms of players that didn't show up in the stat sheet, definitely Naimer Du, definitely Johanna Tadare, but I'll also mention Toriano Towns. I mean, the lead assistant coach. If I wanted to go like off the team, since you did one, Leo.
I had to.
He, is the architect of how Colorado plays defense. He, J.R. Payne is actually, despite kind of the defensive identity of the team, she kind of focuses more on the offensive side and, drawing up sets. She's always the one that, draws up the inbound plays, stuff like that. So for Toriana Towns to put together a really solid defense this season wasn't, I would say the strength that the tournament teams had, but still with all those new players and having to piece together a solid team defense, that's an underrated part of game planning for a new season is putting together the right defensive lineups to stop specific teams. And I thought they did so very well against TCU. They had Sedona Prince really flustered early in that game and kind of just got worn down. But Torian Towns, husband of J.R. Payne, unsung hero for Colorado.
Okay, let's do the Russell Westbrook spark plug. It's funny, you guys both kind of mentioned guys who bring a lot of energy, but maybe we can also turn this into a bit of a leadership thing. Where did all the energy come from, whether that was on the court or from the bench or sidelines?
I got to shout out senior Trevor Baskin. He came in, like Harrison mentioned, this is only his first year in the team coming from Colorado Mesa University D2, but he fit in right away. He was a spark, and you could visibly see Tad Boyle decided to bring him up to the press conference a lot of the times just from his maturity, just from the standpoint that he provides as a leader on this team. And I think he was definitely a veteran presence that's going to be missed and a voice in the locker room that was definitely respected. And he gets after it. His energy, his passion for the game is so evident when he comes in. Players really feed off of that. And even when he's in the starting lineup, I think that sets the tone early for the Buffaloes. And he's a player that you're gonna miss because he's one of these high character, high morale, high energy guys that really make up the Colorado Buffaloes.
Yeah, just going into mine, I would say, of the players that I haven't mentioned, Kendall Wetta tended to be, when she was on, and that fed into every aspect of the team. She had a high intensity defensive play, just grabbing a steal, just knowing that that's her ball, she's gonna go grab it. That fired up the bench, that lit a spark under everything. So I think Kendall Wetta, she had her ups and downs this season. She had some injuries to deal with, but when she was on and when she was making nice passes, and even when she was just making shots, like making a three, she definitely provided a ton of energy. Not off the bench, but mostly as a starter, but still just fed into everything.
Awesome. That's all I had. So if you guys had any last things that we didn't get to hit on from the tournament this season, your coverage, anything, please let us know, Leo.
Yeah, I just want to say it's extremely blessed and grateful opportunities to come out and do this stuff. I think a lot of the times, as college students, it's very easy to get distracted in the whole school life of everything, but just get an opportunity to come out and see basketball, see the things we love. I know, the reason why we're in this club is because we have so much love for sport and so much passion for this. To be able to come out and do it and see other like-minded folks, other like-minded individuals, it truly is inspiring. And I'm just thankful for the Big 12 and thankful for the Colorado Buffaloes and the way this tournament has been handled and organized. And I'm excited to see the future of this team. And I think if you are a fan, you must hold lots of optimism for where the Colorado Buffaloes basketball programs, both of them are headed, even though the women's have a little bit of uncertainty for the future.
Yeah, I couldn't have said that better myself. I'm extremely grateful for the trips and everything that, started off rocky this time around. Turned out really fun, and I couldn't be more happy to see where it goes next.
Awesome. And I appreciate you guys for giving us that insight. I'm glad you guys could be boots on the ground there and really let us know what happened behind the scenes. Obviously, anyone who's into CU hoops is going to really appreciate the coverage you guys gave them. I couldn't, if you didn't say you were in college, I wouldn't have been able to tell. You guys are doing some great stuff there. And hopefully we can keep this train rolling and actually give a little bit more coverage throughout the season next year. With that being said, unless we get a surprise March Madness bid from the women's team, or I think March is about giving a team like CU a chance at March Madness. So we'll see if they surprise us, but I doubt it.
And if not, they'll have the BIT. They'll have some games to play.
Yes, they will have the BIT. We'll see what happens there too, I guess. But either way, we're going to keep this rolling. We got football season coming up. We got a little football coverage before we head into summer break. But next year, again, as you guys said, these should be fun teams to watch. And I'm really excited to cover that. Really excited to see what you guys bring. So thank you guys so much for listening. This has been Skill Buff Sports, the SportsCast. Sorry, I'll never get used to that. And we will see you guys soon.